Hello again, and thank you for coming back to this channel. I have a brand new cultural commentary that I'm going to be talking about with you today. And it surrounds a filmmaker who is notorious, is now controversial, when originally he was about as inoffensive as you can get. And of course, the filmmaker I'm talking about is Rian Johnson. Now, Rian Johnson has directed films like Brick, The Brothers Bloom, Looper, The Last Jedi, and the upcoming Knives Out, which is a murder mystery surrounding a family of heirs to a murder mystery novel empire. And beyond that, in the subtext, or more than likely based on how blunt Last Jedi was with its political messaging in just the text, this might be the cringe fest of the year, and the movie Cuck was already set to be the cringe fest of the year on October 4th, and yet for some reason Rian Johnson is now just a political hack filmmaker, much in the same vein as like Michael Moore, when if you knew anything about his early career, which most Star Wars fans do not, because they only know, for the most part, his involvement in Star Wars. Rian Johnson was kind of an up-and-coming hotshot. With his film Brick, he received multiple accolades, as well as just acclaim across the board for his clever use of dialogue and creating the vernacular of teens at a high school. And Brick in itself is a neo-noir murder mystery in a high school starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. If you haven't watched it, I would recommend you do. It seems now, as Rian Johnson's career gets bigger, that it is probably his best movie, which is not a good thing. You always want to keep getting better and better as you go along. The Brothers Bloom is, and I forget the plot because it has been over a decade since that film came out, but it was a really fun movie with Adrian Brody and Rachel Weisz and Mark Ruffalo. And then he made Looper, which is a time travel film starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt once again and Bruce Willis, who are playing the same character, Joseph Gordon-Levitt being the younger, Bruce Willis being the older. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character is an assassin who is instructed to kill fugitives from the future, and in order to close the time loop, you inevitably have to kill yourself. But it devolves into a whole mystery about like why the agency that he works for sent him back in time to kill himself. And it's really fun. It's not the best science fiction film of the decade, however, I would say it was pretty good. But we've had a lot of good shit. I still remember Automata being like one of the big ones. Ex Machina, District 9 was last decade. Fuck. Damn. And, there are a couple others that I'm forgetting to remember right now, but a lot of it, science fiction in this decade had to deal with artificial intelligence. So to have something that was specifically and strictly time travel was pretty nice. It was a good change of pace in science fiction. However, with the release of The Last Jedi, he has stated that he's made a controversial movie because he wants all of his movies to be controversial like this. However, as the title states, Rian Johnson is a lizard person. And it's not true, however, it is also not facetious, or it is not facetious, however, it is somewhat true, in that Rian Johnson is not the same filmmaker that he used to be. I would dare to think that he could make another film like Brick, and his career is shown as such. He's made only like fun little movies, and now all these fucking ridiculous controversies. And he could probably redo The Fly, because The Fly in itself was a great filler episode for Breaking Bad, as well as good for the syndication market, if that even existed anymore. But with the release of The Last Jedi, he for some reason, had to go more political, had to do the subverting of expectations, which is now his meme. It is his meme that is subverting expectations. And he also had to, do these giant grand deconstructions. And in Knives Out, it is apparently about the deconstruction of white privilege, according to all of these shill reviews. Now, I am myself a member of the Fandom Menace. However, I should state for the record, I do not hate The Last Jedi like everyone else does. I hate The Force Awakens probably as much as everybody else hates The Last Jedi. I find The Last Jedi to only be better because it is not just carbon copy, soulless, fucking no characters, the ruining of characters is pretty bad in Last Jedi, but, it was built on a shaky foundation, and it wasn't the worst thing in the world to me. However, I do see all the flaws in the film, and over time, I think I might actually just give up on it entirely and say, yeah, this was 100% a fucking train wreck of an abortion of a car crash. Because it is not a good movie, The Last Jedi. It truly isn't, You have the destruction of Luke Skywalker, which was only superseded by the destruction of Han Solo. So, in that regard, it's on point with this trilogy. And yet, at the same time, it does absolutely bugfuck ridiculous shit, like Princess Leia can fucking force pull herself through space as a fight-or-flight mechanism inside her body. Supreme Leader Snoke doesn't matter, therefore we should just kill him the fuck off because he was a complete waste of time. Whereas we try to make General Hux a threat, he is now just comic relief for the bad guys. We repeat these same arcs for not only Finn, but Captain Phasma. She shows up, then she disappears, and in Last Jedi, she dies, so we don't have to suffer through the affirmative action character that was only made because they didn't want to toss out the design of a chrome stormtrooper, and so they gave it to Gwendolyn Christie in order to increase the diversity of the film, and you know how the story goes. However, Rian Johnson's two biggest contributions to Star Wars as a mythos are the characters of Vice Admiral Gender Studies Holdo and Rose Tico, the potato sack wearing, what is the fucking point of her character existence of a plot device person. I really don't know how to describe Rose Tico. To me, she is like this anomaly. And if you've ever watched The Director and the Jedi, I would recommend you do. There is a merchant along the Seven Seas, if you get my drift, that has all of the Blu-ray features for purchase of some non-monetary value. And yet, in that documentary, I saw that Rian Johnson created Rose Tico as this character that absolutely does not belong in the Star Wars universe. And it's on purpose, and to him, it's like this person that I would have hung out with in high school. That's great, Ryan. You're, A, working a franchise, B, trying to fit in with other movies, and C, you have a fan base that is rabid about the property, and maybe you should treat it with some respect instead of just doing whatever you want. But that's the other thing that has been discovered through the work of all of the members of the Fandom Menace in one way or another, is that Lucasfilm Limited, under supervision of producer Kiri Hart, greenlit what was an early draft of The Last Jedi, as that is the shooting script. We're going to work with that on production. We have no qualms with this. Kathleen Kennedy has said shit like, oh, Rian Johnson makes me feel so comfortable. I love working with him. He's just such a great guy. And, it makes me think that he's like some kind of sick fetishist freak that wants to have mommy Kathleen be his dom. And I'm not going to go into that shit any further. But, the whole film reeked of a first draft. You watch Brick. You watch Brothers Bloom. You watch Looper. Those are not films that smell like a first draft film. Last Jedi is completely a first draft movie in that it is harebrained. It has so many botched ideas going on at one point or another. It has no real consistency from scene to scene. It's just like, let's just try to throw in crazy shit. Let's subvert your expectations by, just throwing in a twist at random. I'm pretty sure M. Night Shyamalan is pissed off that this guy has a big career right now and he has to, claw his way back to the top. But, if you've ever watched Last Airbender or After Earth, it's pretty well deserved. However, Rian Johnson should be worried as a filmmaker with a new movie coming out because the backlash was strong against The Last Jedi. The backlash was so strong that the next Star Wars film to be released by Disney, Solo, made only like $300 million out of a inflated budget that was purported to be in the $500 million range due to a near complete overhaul of the film right as it was about to get into post-production. And yet Rian Johnson walks away clean. He blames everybody on Twitter for being these straight white males who can't take any criticism. It's like, bro, it seems like you can't take criticism because every time someone tries to come at you, you block them, you lock your comment section on Instagram, you do every version tactic that has been cooked up by the the great Steve Shives, and you look weak. You look weak, and now you're on the press tour for Knives Out, and you're trying to, cook up some excitement by comparing your movie to The Empire Strikes Back, which is sure to just keep pissing off every Star Wars fan, much like the commentary I recently watched by that Star Wars girl linked in the description, where she got mad specifically at that statement that he said, and with all the critics, they have coalesced into creating a grand narrative that Knives Out is a great movie for the current year because of its political, quote-unquote, subtext, which, as we all know, when it comes to Rian Johnson and any political messaging, it's in your face. It's beating the shit out of you with it, and you cannot look away because it's going to interrupt the movie. It's going to just grind the movie to a halt, and you're going to have to pay attention to this, and then you cringe, maybe even audibly, and then you have to keep going through this fucking train wreck of an abortion, of a car crash. And, to all you shills out there who are, just constantly, licking this dude's poop chute, I want to know why. Because, as I've stated, Rian Johnson is not the same Rian Johnson of yore. He is a completely new Rian Johnson. If you have seen some of his choice Twitter interactions over the years, he has said shit like, I want one of those, when it was a photo of a t-shirt that said, ask me about my feminist film agenda. He has said shit like, there's so much that I've seen as a result of GamerGate. I am paraphrasing right there, but I will have the quote in the description. He did make a, 2014 and GamerGate changed my perspective on reality, and he was not a pro GamerGate person. He was, in fact, an anti-GGer. I would dare to call him a gamer gazier, based on the way that he perceived GamerGate and how much of it he knows. That is someone who is engaged in the online world, and I would say this to anyone: get off Twitter. Just stop using Twitter. It is not healthy for you. It is not healthy for the world. It is not healthy for the people in the media who use it all day, every day, and think it's honest work. It is not. It is a website that you can monetize. Much like any other social media out there, you can eventually monetize if you build a giant following. You know, when there were articles in 2017 like, Trump blocked me on Twitter and it is costing me my career, I laughed at those people because all they do is just spout hate all day at their enemy, and they have no compassion, and they are just culture warriors, and they really need to get their shit together and get a real job and get off Twitter. And I would say this to Rian Johnson specifically because it has clearly eaten at his person. You know, Twitter did not exist when Brick was being made. Twitter just started when The Brothers Bloom released in 2009. Twitter became pretty ubiquitous right after Looper was released in theaters. I would say in around 2013, people were starting to pay attention to their Twitters. And now we live in a highly energized culture war that Twitter is the main line of the battleground, and you know, you have the sections retreating into places like Gab or Mastodon if they're like, I cannot handle it, or in Gab's case, it's mainly made up of people who are fucking banned from Twitter. And with all that being said, you know, to the Fandom Menace people, I would recommend you guys definitely need to start watching more movies. You know, Jeff and his podcast, World Class Bullshitters, one of the things I really like about it is that he does have film knowledge. One of the things I love about Please Rewind is his just super obscure film knowledge. It makes me feel like I need to go back to film school, which is something I really don't want to do. And I know people like Mahler are trying to beef up their film language, beef up what they've seen and what they haven't seen. And yes, we do live in a giant content war where everything is just a struggle to get your attention. But, you know, if you haven't seen certain classics, you should watch those certain classics. If you haven't seen certain films that have piqued your interest, go out there and watch those movies. And better yet, if you want to quit binging but you want to watch something, watch a feature film. You know, you can get it done with, you know, maximum 3 hours tops. Most don't even get near there. Most of them are half that, and 90 minutes. 90 minutes, I think you can get through in a day after work, you know. And with all of this content out there, you know, now is the time, because the accessibility of content is just ever increasing. And if we as a group decide to beef up our film language, you know, these people will have to start taking us seriously, because they'll be like, oh, well, what the fuck are you talking about? Sounds like you just made that up. And then it makes them look dumber to the average person who says, hey, I've seen that movie. That's a real movie. Because these people are frauds. The access media, they are constantly shilling for what I would call establishment media, in that it is, you know, it is franchises, it is major corporations, it is not independent filmmaking. If an independent filmmaker has made something for one of said corporations, much like Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi, they will probably start licking poop shoots to gain favor. However, this is why we need to defeat these people. They are seriously killing everything we love, everything that we hold dear, and the media that we passively consume and now actively consume, because it's either really good or we're just finding stuff in it that we never saw before. And yeah, I would say be an active consumer of your media. Do not passively consume stuff. Don't be a boomer. Don't just sit there and watch whatever is on the television. We have more options than 3 channels now. We do not need to suffer anymore. And in conclusion on Rian Johnson, I feel that, and history might prove the victor to be us, that Rian Johnson when releasing The Last Jedi, had a huge fall from grace as far as his early work is concerned. He completely did a dramatic 180. He, for some reason, is still being granted an entire trilogy to himself, which I do not think will really happen, but we will see on that. Apparently, it all depends on Knives Out, so if we all avoid it like the plague, I think we'll be okay, and I think we'll hear the last from this guy. But to all of those who want to shill for Rian Johnson, and shill for The Last Jedi, and say, Rian Johnson is great, and you're probably watching movies wrong, tread lightly, because this guy is not the same.